All right, guys. You wanted a video on this thing. This is really not going to be a diagnostic video as much as it is. I don't know, maybe a thought process. I'm not really sure. I'm exhausted. I worked on this truck, this 06 RX 330, for the better part of 20 hours. All right, and that's not an exaggeration. I worked on it Friday from when I came in the morning till roughly 10 o'clock at night. Saturday I came in, I did not take any other work, and I stayed on this thing until 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock at night, when I finally found the issue. A lot of the time on this thing was researching, trying to figure out how things work, collaborating with other YouTubers, who I want to thank you guys, Eric from South Main Auto. I want to thank PJ and Mario and all the other guys, Daniel, all you guys that tried to, all the others. If I forgot anybody, I'm sorry. I'm just exhausted. But I want to thank you guys for, for taking the time out of your schedule to try to research and try to, put the puzzle together, so to speak, with this truck. In all honesty, this was, I usually don't get into situations like this, okay? That's the truth of it. But, the videos that I do, I am always honest. I'm always trying to put out real information, real, things that I think will help people. I was going to do a video on this, and then I stopped. The reason for that is because I really didn't feel that this was going to help anybody in diagnosing one of these vehicles, all right? Because there's really no, to put you through the diagnostic process I went through with this would be impossible. The video would be 3 days long. So I don't know how to condense that, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what happened, and I'm going to explain how I got burned on it, and I'm going to explain, and by getting burned, I mean the reason that you could go down the wrong path. And I always tell everybody this, and I tell you guys in the videos, when you're doing something and you're checking something, you have to know how a system works in order to fix it. Now, that's one thing. There's other parts to that, okay? Understanding a circuit, understanding how a system works is very important, obviously, for obvious reasons. However, there are times when you overlook something, and that will also, even if you understand the system 100%, if you overlook something or you miss something, but for whatever reason, that will also take you down the wrong path. That is what happened to me here with this truck. Now, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on this multiplex system that's in this truck. I'm not, okay? Can I figure out most of it? Yeah, to a point. Having PJ, who's a Toyota Master Tech, I could run things by him. He could, if I'm lost on something, he could explain it to me. So, having this network is obviously a benefit to everyone in that situation. However, what happens when you don't have answers? When testing doesn't lead you in the right direction, okay? So that's what I'm really doing this video about. And this car, I'm making no excuses here, kicked my ass, okay? And that's just the way it is. What I just found out today, after speaking to the owner of the vehicle, is that he bought the truck in this condition where he was lied to, or he was given a half-truth, I should say. He was told by the owner, the previous owner, that the battery would die in the truck sometimes, and you'd have to jump start it, then it'd be fine. Well, he said it probably has a bad battery, or the alternator may be going, or whatever. So this guy buys the truck, and he legitimately finds out right away that the truck goes dead overnight. He came, I guess, after the day after he bought it, it was dead. So he went out, he bought himself an alternator and a battery, put it in, had it put in, and figured that was the end of his problems. Well, lo and behold, that was not the end of his problems, but the beginning, because the truck at that point started to do the same exact thing the very next day. He would let it sit and it would die. So he contacted the guy who he bought it from, and he told him, well, my mechanic knows the truck very well, you should bring it to him. He's always serviced it since it was new, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the case was, he calls the guy. The guy gave him some kind of crap line about stuff that basically was blowing him off, didn't want to get involved in the truck. My assumption from that, and it is just that, an assumption, is that this guy knew there was a problem with the truck, and he attempted to fix it, and couldn't fix it, and walked away from it. And after, probably told the other guy to sell the truck, and did not ever want to see the thing back in his shop again. And I could understand that feeling after working on this. I don't ever want to see this truck again, not for this problem. All right, so fast forward. This guy's had the truck for a number of months. Nobody could figure it out, or nobody wanted to get involved in it. Whatever the case was, they either turned them off, they didn't want to fix it, they didn't want to work on it, or they looked at it and, pretty much gave up. They didn't know what to do with it and gave it back to him. So it ends up here, I forget how, on a recommendation or some crap, and we start to go through the truck. And I always tell you guys, I've done parasitic draw videos before. That's why with this, I was kind of laughing when I said, I'm not going to bother. It's going to be, a 20-minute check. It's going to be the same old story trying to video this. The guys are going to get sick of seeing the same crap. Well, if I would have videoed it, I would have needed a cameraman, and I would have needed probably some very special editing software to edit out all the curse words. But this thing drove me crazy, and I'm going to now walk you through why that happened, okay? I'm going to put some pictures in here, providing that I saved them, and I'm going to show you as we go through, as I'm explaining in editing, okay? The first thing I do is I either use an amp clamp on my scope around the cable of the battery to check for the draw, okay? Or, in this case, I decided to hook up my fluke, which is my preferred method on most applications, okay? Not all the time, but a lot of times. I enjoy using my fluke. I don't know. Call it nostalgia, okay? In any case, I hook up the fluke. I have a 600 milliamp draw on this vehicle. And it's steady. There's no, it's steady. It's 600 milliamps. I let it sit. I looked up the time to let this thing power down, and I think it specified 10 minutes or something like that. So it's not a long power down like some of the other vehicles are, half hour, 45 minutes, whatever, an hour. So that was good news. I let it sit for 10 minutes. I came back out, had my coffee, and looked at it, and it's still 600 milliamps. At that point, I was like, well, okay, we have a draw. I'm going to give it another 20 minutes, though, because sometimes specifications and service information are wrong. So I'm going to give it another 20 minutes, and I'm going to verify that I still have a drain. So I did that. I went on to something else, came back to it, and we still had a drain. So I was like, okay, now it's time to start involving other stuff and, going into testing. What do? Well, I do what I always do. I grab my amp pound and I start looking for fuses that are going to be a problem. Keep in mind, when you're doing this sort of testing, always prepare the vehicle. If it has a hood latch that's electronic, latch the hood. If it has door latches that are electronic, latch the doors. Make this car believe that it's asleep for the night, meaning everything is closed, okay? So there's no inputs that are going to be keeping you alive and giving you a draw. That's false, okay? That's obviously step one, all the time. That's done. We have a draw, we grab our amp pound, and we start testing fuses. Well, I find my draw on fuse, on ECU B fuse. Now, I got about, 40 pages roughly of crap here. So I don't know if I even have, and it's not all here, so I don't even know if the diagram I want is going to be here. I don't think it is. I think that's inside. Really don't need it. I'm not going through all this again. What happened was that fuse controls a whole bunch of crap. It's a hot all the time circuit, so battery feed, and it's a 7.5 amp fuse that goes to a bunch of modules in the vehicle. It goes to your door lock, your door window switch, or module, whatever you want to call this crap. It goes to a module in the back of the vehicle in the D-pillar, it goes to the cluster, it goes to the radio, it goes to etc. Okay, a bunch of crap in the car. So now, you could probably isolate it by getting to the junction block, but the junction block is not easy to get to on this vehicle to do that. So I think it's behind this dash somewhere. I couldn't find it, in truth. I did look for it. I couldn't even find it. What I have found with this vehicle is things are not always where they say they're supposed to be in service information. So I didn't want to waste time, and what I wanted to do was obviously get to the root cause of the problem as quickly as possible. Okay, what I did first was I grabbed my thermal camera, okay, after I found the fuse that has the draw, and I started to look at things at rest to see what was hot. And what I noticed was my my master window switch here was hot. I looked around inside the vehicle and I noticed the instrument cluster also appeared to be warm in spots. Now, I wasn't sure if that was just from it not sitting long enough to cool all the way down. Things take time to cool down. That's a possibility. So I let it sit a while, and I came back to it, and I still saw a little bit of warmth out of that cluster. And I was like, okay. So this was the part that was hot, though. This was warm. It was like, it was in here in the shop, it was probably 44 degrees, and or maybe 48 degrees, something like that. This thing was like 65, 68 degrees at that point. So I disconnected the switch, and I watched my meter power down. It dropped to 250 milliamps, and I watched it, and about 30, 40, 50 seconds later, it dropped down to like 70 milliamps, which to me seemed a little high yet, but it's kind of borderline. My thing is 50 milliamps is spec, okay? My thing is always 50 milliamps is the rule of thumb. So I wasn't sure at that point. I was like, well, it seems okay. I plugged the switch back in. I watched it jump back up, and I was like, huh, all right. So I said, well, for the heck of it, let me just check that cluster and see if, what's going on there. So I checked the cluster, and it was still warm a little bit. So I pulled it out and I disconnected it, and nothing happened. So I was like, on my draw. So I was like, all right. I chalked it up to it still warmed up a little bit. It still didn't cool down all the way, which, it wasn't as hot as this. It was like 50 degrees, 52 degrees. I didn't think much of it. So I plugged that back in, left it, as it was, and moved on. And I verified it 2 or 3 times that it would power down with this switch disconnected to about 68 to 70 milliamps. So I was like, okay, I'm going to call the switch. It's keeping it on. Now, another thing I want to tell you is this switch was not working properly either with the power window. I could not set the driver's window. Meaning on these vehicles, when you disconnect the battery or the battery goes dead or you unplug a switch or whatever, and you roll the window up in here, it may not work. All the functions, the auto may not work or whatever. On that one, what was happening was when I would roll it up, it would go up, and this is when the vehicle came in, as a matter of fact, because I rolled the window up when it first came in, and it would hit the auto, it would go up, and it would hit the top, and it would roll back down. So I tried doing the reset procedure on it. That didn't fix it. I ended up ordering a switch. I said, well, this thing has 2 failures, obviously. It's got the auto function on. It's not working right. I can't program, can't reset it and get it to work properly, and it's got a draw. So I'm going to order a switch. So I called the dealer and almost fell down because they wanted $865 for a switch for this piece of crap because they call it a module, right? So it is a module, but I digress. So I says, well, I called the customer, explained where we were. He says, let's fix it. I said, okay. And then I sat here and thought about it a bit, and I was like, maybe I could find a used switch for this guy. I feel bad for him. He's been through enough with this truck already. Let me try to see what I can do for him. So I ordered I found a used switch from a place that I trust around here, actually in Staten Island, and they sent it to me Friday. So that's when I really got back to the misery with this vehicle. I plugged the switch in. Actually, I was out doing something. I think I was diagging a car. My partner plugged the switch in while I was out, and when I got back, he gave me the good news that the drawer's still there. So my heart, sunk, got a little sick to my stomach, and how could that be? So me, the first thing I do is come over and test to see if I could program, I keep saying program, if I could come over and get the switch to operate properly. Does it work? Did that change, or is that still the same problem? So I rolled it up and it rolled down. I did the reset procedure, it worked, and it works, and everything works. So I was like, oh, cool. I was like, all right, well, at least I called the switch, it was bad, but why is it still drawing? That's when everything went to hell, because I had looked at the diagram on this, and it's a complex diagram on the way the system works. I'm not even going to begin to go into explaining that. But it is a multiplex system, okay? It's called a bean. That's bean. It's amazing. I went to the other side. I went to the passenger side and rechecked to see if that switch is warm. It's not. I checked the other switches. They're not warm. But I noticed something that I didn't notice before. The lights, the LEDs inside the switches were blinking. And that means that they're not set. Like I just said with the main window switch, it wasn't set. So I have to do a reset procedure. But the kick in the ass about that is that it was very dim. And what I noticed was this was doing it with the key out of the ignition. So that grabbed my attention because I didn't notice that before. I didn't notice it on the master switch either. It was very, very dim. So I hit the window switch on the passenger door, and the window went down. Keys out of the ignition. That's when I really got sick to my stomach, because I said, oh boy. I said, this thing isn't going to sleep. Like, even though there's no drain, it's still awake. How could that be? So I'd watch the meter, I'd hit the switch, I'd see the amperage jump when I hit the window motor, operated the window motor, and then it would just drop right back down to about 0.6. So I was like, wow, okay. Got the scope out, went to the multiplex wires on the main switch, and found that I had activity. That is where it went real bad, because at that point I was confident I had a bad switch. You know what I mean? I thought it was a bad switch, which, yes, it was a bad switch in one regard. It didn't function properly, but it was not the cause of the drain. So I moved on to attempting to learn more about the circuit, research. I came up with really nothing that would help me. I pinned out the switch. Mario had advice for, he said, put an amp clamp around each wire on the switch and follow the amperage. Smart. That's a good idea. So I did that, and I had nothing. I had no draw here. I had nothing that I could see, which made no sense to me whatsoever, because plugged in, the switch was hot. Nothing I was doing made any sense, honestly. So I just kept chasing my tail, basically, with this thing back and forth, and then found that the latch inside the door, the key, when you move the key, that sends a signal to this module in the driver's door to tell the position of the key switch, which I knew that was there, but I didn't think that would be affecting anything. But at this point, God knows what it was. So I pulled the door panel off, got to that circuit, started making tests there, noticed some stuff that I didn't like on one of the lines, because there's a wire that goes from that latch to this, and it's just that one connection. That's all it is. It doesn't go to anything else, and it tells the position of the switch. Well, at rest, it's supposed to be, in lock position, it's supposed to be like 12 volts or something, and then at unlock position, it's supposed to go to ground, or vice versa. I can't even remember right now. In this case, what I was seeing was in the one position when it's supposed to be 12 volts, I was actually seeing not even a square wave, but a strange signal, almost like a square wave that was distorted. So I was like, whoa, that ain't no good. Something's wrong. What's going on? So I start chasing that, and that got me nowhere. So I had exhausted every option, every test that I could possibly do on this 10 times over. I kept going through things, and I missed something. In the end, to cut this video as short as I can, I had all but given up on fixing it, and I sat here for a while and, just really didn't know what to do. I mean, I had looked at the harness under here, because we were suspecting a harness maybe in in the kick panel, because there's a lot of wiring in this truck, a lot of connectors. There was nothing really, nothing really that I could see there. Assembly. I pulled this out and I found this. That's never a good sign. See the rust? And I noticed it was mainly on this side. It was all on this side. So I looked down to see what I can see. And if you guys can make this out, you see that rust? That's not paint, that's rust. Here, you can see it too well, hang on. Right here, and at those connectors, right there. See that? So I smiled a little and then pulled each one of these connectors out, and I found all green crusties, as Eric would say, inside those connectors. And I laughed for a second. I said it can't be, because I mean I would have saw this on the circuit testing I did, and I would have picked this up somewhere. Keep something in mind also, guys. I use data on this vehicle to check switch inputs at the BCM and check switch inputs at other modules. I went through all that. Nothing showed a problem. Every switch worked properly as it was designed. So before anybody says you didn't check data, I did. Didn't help me. I unplugged these, found the green crusties in there, disconnected the battery, cleaned all of the connections very, very thoroughly, used CLR. That stuff is fantastic for this kind of stuff. It cleans them almost like brand new. And then I got in there with a little pick, very, very tiny pick. Just made sure that there was nothing laying around there, crusties on there, and got everything cleaned up. And there was not a lot of terminals that were rusted either. There was probably about 7 of them, 6 or 7 out of the whole, maybe not even that many, maybe 5 or 6 out of the whole connection, out of all 4 connectors there. Okay, there were, a couple on each. So I cleaned them up and I plugged it back in and said, well, that ain't gonna fix anything, but at least I cleaned it and I know that that's good. I hooked my meter back up and my drawer was gone. So when I plugged that back in, my drain was gone. It powered down. I, cycled the door locks to power it back up, wake it up, and it woke up and it powered back down. Now I'll just show you on the scope what I was babbling about here. Basically, what we've got is these two here are the MPX lines at the switch. The green trace it's called the LSW. It's the door locked position. This is actually reading the position of the key switch. Okay, and this one. This is actually the green is what I was talking about before, which to me didn't make any sense because, hang on, when it's asleep, this is actually what I have, okay? I'm screwing this up. The green, when it's asleep, actually looks like this. All right? So, I don't know what the hell that is. That threw me for a loop though. And the purple, as you can see here, this one is grounded. I'll bring one of these traces down. It's grounded when it's asleep, and when it's awake, you can see you've got a 12-volt signal on it, okay? And that was the one that I was telling you was pin 3 that I was not aware of, and in the diagrams could not find it. So I do not know. What that goes to exactly. Maybe that's to the body control module. I cannot find it in any of the wiring diagrams, including the factory diagrams. So basically what I'm getting at here is, how do you not get burned with something like this? Well, I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that. If I would have noticed miraculously, because that's what it would have taken as a miracle to know that the other windows were operative or operational when the vehicle was asleep, when the car was asleep, so to speak, I would have known technically it wasn't asleep, right? Once we fixed it, I was saying before, it went to about 60 milliamps roughly when I disconnected the window switch. Once I fixed this vehicle and found the water damage, this thing went to about 24, 25 milliamps, which is much, it sat much better with me, obviously, because it's now in spec. And I also noticed at that point that the windows now are inoperative, okay? Which is the way it should be. It's asleep, they don't work. Like now, like I could hit these switches and nothing will happen. Before, if I did that, those windows would have worked. So this truck, you know, we always say we try to learn from every experience, and you know, next time I would know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would have gone diving in for water in that kick panel or anywhere for that matter right off the bat. You know, it's kind of a hard call to make. Would I be more aware next time of the possibilities? Yeah, of course. That's probably the only thing that I've learned from this experience. You know, I was this close, guys, to bailing on this vehicle, honestly, Saturday, because I came down, I stayed here late, obviously, and I was saying that maybe it's time to know your limit and give up. But you know, I know the customer wanted to fix it, and you know, he was willing to okay a switch that's $900 or whatever it is, and you know, it was one of those deals that doesn't make me happy at all. I did not want to spend this kind of time on a car, make me look like, kind of feel like a fool. You know, spend all kinds of hours in here that could have been home relaxing, because it really was my time off, you know. But I don't know. I don't know what to say, because I really don't. Like I said in the beginning, I don't know how much you guys are going to learn here from this experience. There's not a whole lot to teach. I don't know myself, because even to this point, I don't know how that corrosion affected, or what the corrosion affected exactly. Because at the point I was at 10 o'clock at night, I was not about to start trying to trace these harnesses out and figure out where every pin was, and my head was burnt. So I had to chalk it up to it's a win, in the sense that we fixed it and we found it, which is good for the customer. You know, he was ready. He just bought this thing. He was ready on the verge of getting rid of it. But as far as what I learned from it, and you know, whatever, I don't know. I mean, what you guys are going to learn from it, probably nothing. It's you know, I'm showing you data. I'm showing you info on the scope there that really probably means nothing to most of you guys. You know, the parts of it I understand fine, but the parts I don't understand, like that crazy trace that we got there, I'd like to see another Lexus like this come in, and I'd like to actually pull that switch out, and it's quick enough, and throw the scope on it and just see that the pattern is the same. And I'm going to assume it is going to be the same, because this does work. Everything works. Matter of fact, the truck has codes in it for a couple of other things. For what was it? For the AC system, I think a sensor or something. It's setting codes for one or two of the sensors. It's not here for that. He doesn't want that fixed. But the only other thing that it had was a steering angle code, and that was from the battery being dead, obviously, and disconnected and all that crap. So I reset that, and that code did not return. Everything seems okay there. I'm trying to think of what else I could really tell you that would be beneficial, but there's really, I don't think there's much, you know. We had no codes to go with the truck, as far as communication or as far as issues. So I mean, whatever was causing this, whatever that corrosion affected, the BCM, I'm assuming it would be the BCM, did not see an issue. The window master switch was not showing an issue or giving an issue to the BCM. I don't know. It was a pain in the ass job for me. It gave me a run for my money for sure, and I'm just happy to be. I'm just happy to have this thing back together and fixed. That's all I can really say. I appreciate you guys, giving me feedback on the picture I put up, and I wasn't going to make a video on this. Like I said, I started to film. I shut it off. I shut the camera off because I saw at that point that I was in trouble here with this thing, and it's not that I have a problem. I'm here now telling you, so it's not that I have a problem, putting myself out there like that, but it's just the fact that I just could not be involved trying to film when I was in such a deep process of trying to diagnose this thing. But you guys seem to want a video on it. You wanted to know more, so I'm just trying to explain it as long as this video is. I'm trying to explain everything that I can think of to tell you what we what we did, what we were trying to do, what we were trying to accomplish, and basically it was that we were trying to find an input that was causing an issue, or a something that was showing in data, or something that would show on the scope that was not correct. That's what we were looking for. And in all honesty, the only thing that I saw that changed is that 12-volt pin on there that I showed you, the one trace that went from ground to 12 volts. That's the only one that I saw that changed, and that's not on the diagram, so I don't know if that would have helped me at all. It was at 12 volts all the time before because it was not asleep. So that makes sense. So would that have told me anything that I didn't already know? Not that I could tell, you know what I mean? Not that I could think of. It's very hard when you go down a path and you're checking data, you're checking signals, you're pinning out, systems on a vehicle, and you're not seeing the cause for the effect, okay, if that makes sense. And that was the case here. And I still don't know exactly how the water, was it a voltage drop? Was it, whatever it was not giving me an indication in scan data or on the scope. So I guess I was not checking the proper place or whatever. I don't know about the BCM. I tried to back probe some of the stuff at the BCM. It's very tight and difficult, to see the pins and to get to everything. And I did what I could. And the stuff that I did test, I didn't see a problem with. So I'm going to chalk it up to I missed something. Don't know what. Can't even think of what it could possibly be at this point after all the hours in it. But I am thorough. You guys know that watch me. I do go the extra mile to check something, to verify. And this one burned me, and the thermal camera is my friend. But in this case, it's just the way it is. You know what I mean? The camera showed me the heat source. That was absolutely working properly. The heat source was the switch, but that was not, in this case, and 90% of the time that would have been the problem. 99% of the time probably. And this was the 1% where it wasn't the problem, so be careful. If you're going to take anything away from this video, it would be this. Don't ever assume anything. And I mean that. Am I telling you to go check all the other windows if this happens to you? Yeah, at this point, I guess I am. I really don't know what to say, guys. I wanted to explain as best I could, and this is really where I'm at. The truck is fixed. I'm relieved, not happy, but relieved. And there's something to be said for persistence. If there's anything else you'll take out of this video, it's persistence has accomplished more than anything else in life, and that's the truth with anything. So be persistent, be tenacious, don't give up, even when you want to, and kick ass. I mean, do what you can, and if all else fails, kill it with fire. That works too. I'm going home. I'm exhausted again, and I'll catch you guys next time. Hopefully I'll have something better for you, more interesting than this crap, because to me this isn't interesting. It sucks. But as always, guys, I appreciate the support. You know, please like the video or don't. I don't like the video. Subscribe. I'd like you to subscribe. And we'll see you guys soon. Thanks.